So, couple of more questions. So, one of the questions that comes up is that why is it that a true full-fledged Carnatic concept has to feature some of these Ghana ragas or the heavy ragas or the staple ragas, so to speak, right? So the analogy here I would use is any good meal needs to have like staple food in it, right? You cannot have a thali without like say a chapati or rice in it. These are like the staples of the meal. You cannot have a meal made up of only appetizers, right? So then the question that comes up, which is lends itself to another nice culinary analogy, is, hey, is there an ordering to these ragas, or is there an ordering to these dishes in which you have to present in a concept, right? A lot of it, I have to say, is actually very culturally cultivated. But that said, there is an ordering, right? In any cuisine for that matter, right? Hey, there is an appetizer followed by a main course, followed by a dessert, followed by a coffee. Right? There is an order in which these things are presented. But nothing to say you cannot start your meal with the dessert. In fact, in many South Indian feasts, the first dish that is actually served is a little bit of tinge of taste of the dessert, right? The payasam is what the meal starts with, although you finish with the payasam also, right? So again, a lot of it is like cultural practices, I would say. But then there is a certain ordering, there's a natural ordering, right? You start with a little bit of a lighter raga to start with, then some brisk and easy that you can easily digest. And then you go on to the heavier ones, right? That's when the staple ragas actually come in. Say your thoris, bhairavis, or kambojis. These are all your staple food items, right? So they come in there. And then you follow it up with like some light, quote unquote, tukaras or like easy ragas after that, and you finish up the meal presentation. So that's typically how a concert is actually structured and planned as well. But that said, the aesthetics of the presentation changes, and depending on the time and the venue and how much time is allocated, sometimes you may not have time to build up in this order, and you might just start right off with like a heavy raga from the get-go. Again, there's no right or wrong here, and there's no absolutely it has to be done this way or whatnot, right? So up to each musician, right? So then the question sometimes comes up: do I have to have these staples in a concert or a kacheri, right? Can I make a concert with just like easy and fun and simple ragas? Why not? You can, right? There is nothing to say that it has to be done this way, it has to be done that way. But it might leave people dissatisfied, so to speak, right? So because you don't feel like you heard like a full-length concert and you haven't heard heavy, weighty things. So in that sense, some ragas have to be included in a concert presentation. So most stalwarts of the classical music, they spend time elaborating these main ragas and showing that hey, what can they bring out in these ragas, right? So of course these ragas have been around for hundreds of years. Much like these dishes, like say a sambar or rasam, have been around for hundreds of years, probably even thousands of years, right? Yet we never tire of them. Yet we eat them day in and day out, right? Why is it that? But they've also kept up with the times, right? Just like how these dishes have kept up with times, these ragas have also kept up with times, right? Even though they've retained the soul of what they are about, I'm sure a Kalyani that is sung today was not exactly how it was sung like 500 years ago, right? It must have been somewhat different, right? Over the years, practices build up, and as new masters of music come in and they add their own touch and nuances, new things start and new things get picked up, right? So that's how the tradition lives on. Then no tradition stays static, and we keep adding to it and we build upon it, and bring these subtle flavors, so to speak, right? These new flavors that actually come, right? So the other favorite question of mine, which evokes a chuckle in me, is the question about fusion music. So a lot of beginners, especially beginners who come from other genres or familiar with other genres of music, they want to do fusion. Hey, let's do a fusion. I want to start with fusion, right? So I would say absolutely you can do right fusion, right? Nothing wrong with doing fusion. But what you fuse with and what you fuse together has to make sense. Right? Just because you can fuse some things together doesn't mean you have to fuse it. So instead of producing fusion, you might produce confusion, right? So the analogy I always use here is like just because you can, you do not go and pour teriyaki sauce on top of tiramisu and then like eat it, right? So tiramisu is obviously an Italian dessert, and teriyaki sauce is like a Japanese spicy sauce. You mix the two together, you end up with perversion. That's all you end up with, right? So same way, a fusion has to make sense. At the end of the day, if it is not aesthetically pleasing, and if it is diluting the essence of the raga, the essence of that genre of music, it makes no sense to fuse, right? So certain ragas, classic examples would be like say Shruti, right? It can only be found in Carnatic music. There's no other system of music in the world where a raga like Shruti would actually fit in, right? Or take a raga like Bhairavi or Nata Kulinchi, right? These are like so flavorful. They remind you of the South Indian culture and genre and flavor throughout, in and out, in and out. It does not make sense to go and attempt to fuse that with something that's completely unrelated, right? So on the other hand, there are fusions that are very natural and very easy to do. So going back again to the example I would use is the Hamsadhvani, right? Hamsadhvani is such a universal flavor, it's such a universal raga, it's such a universally acceptable melody. It can fuse with any system of music, right? Because the notes of Hamsadhvani are naturally harmonious and you cannot not appreciate it, right? You're biologically wired. The sa, ri, ga, pa, ni, and sa is actually you are biologically wired to listen to them as harmonics in your brain, and that way, those things will make sense to fuse with a lot of other systems of music, and it's easier. It lends themselves easier for these fusion experiments. So oftentimes you will hear jugalbandis with Hindustani music and Carnatic music. You'll often find certain ragas repeatedly picked up for jugalbandis. Why is that? Because there's enough of a commonality between those bases, enough of commonality of ingredients, so to speak, enough of commonality of the aesthetics there. It makes sense to blend them together, right? Otherwise, it does not make sense, right? It does not make sense to take how shall I call it, like clashing flavors, right? You cannot put them together. That will not produce confusion. That will not produce fusion. That will only produce confusion. So in that sense, appreciate each system of music for what it is actually about, and enjoy the flavors in their native form, so to speak, before you actually go on and like fuse them. So an example I would use here, one of my family members, they actually love to eat their pizza with pickles and mattakorma, right? To me, it's like I just cringe when I hear about it. But hey, they like it, that flavor or the lack of flavor, I don't know what it is. Maybe the mattakorma just powers over the pizza, I don't know what it is. But they seem to like it, but at the end of the day, fusion should make sense, and make sure you don't sacrifice the aesthetics of one system or the other, right? Otherwise, it does not go well together. And fusion for the sake of fusion is never fun. All right, cool.